For 8 years, the girl touched her ear. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. Her father spent millions, flew across the world, begged specialists to look again. They all shrugged. Then a maid noticed something no one else did, and what she found inside that child's ear will leave you speechless. Vincent Rossi was a billionaire. Private jets, mansions, more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But his daughter Sofia was born deaf. 8 years old, never heard a sound. Vincent tried everything. Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Switzerland. Specialists who charge thousands per hour. They ran tests, scans, procedures. All of them said the same thing. Irreversible. Accept it. But Vincent couldn't accept it because Sofia was all he had left. Her mother died after giving birth to that girl. So Vincent kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the woman he just hired to clean his floors. Elena was a cleaner, 32. No degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to pay her mother's nursing home bills and feed her 2 little children. But she noticed something about Sofia that every specialist had missed. Something in her ear, something dark. And one afternoon while Vincent was away, she made a decision that would either save that girl's life or destroy her own. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video comments, sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. My name is Elena Morales, and in October 2025, I was 32 years old, living in a crumbling 1-bedroom apartment on the far south side of Chicago, where the wind off Lake Michigan cut through the cracked windows like knives even before winter truly arrived. The building smelled of old grease and damp concrete, the kind of place where the heat only worked half the time, and the landlord never answered calls about the leaking roof. I shared the thin mattress on the floor with my 2 little ones, Marco, 6, who still wet the bed some nights from nightmares he couldn't explain, and Lila, 4, who clutched a frayed stuffed rabbit named Bunny, as if it were the only thing keeping the world from falling apart. We were beyond broke. The word poor didn't cover it. I weighed 98 pounds on my 5'4" frame ribs, sharp under skin, that had gone sallow from too many skipped meals so the kids could eat. My arms were thin, almost fragile, marked with faint bruises from lifting heavy trays at the diner job I'd lost 3 months earlier, when the owner cut shifts to save money. Sleep came in snatches, 3, maybe 4 hours if I was lucky, because the radiator clanked all night, or because Marco cried out, or because my mind wouldn't stop spinning with bills I couldn't pay. The electric company had sent the final notice. They would shut us off in 7 days. My mother's nursing home fees were 2 months behind, and the administrator had called again yesterday, voice flat and professional. "Miss Morales, we can't keep her bed much longer without payment. State placement is the next step." State placement meant a facility where no one knew her name, where she might lie in her own waste for hours. My mother had raised me after my father walked out when I was 9. She had fed me when there was nothing, prayed over me when I thought God had forgotten us. I couldn't let her fade into a number. That morning, October 15th, I stood in the tiny kitchenette, staring at the empty cereal box. Lila tugged at my leg. "Mama hungry." Her voice was small, trusting. I forced a smile, the one that hurt my cheeks. "Soon, baby. Mama's fixing it." I poured the last crumbs into a bowl for them, added a splash of watered-down milk, and watched them eat while my stomach twisted into knots. I hadn't eaten since yesterday's half sandwich from the food pantry. My hands shook as I folded the notice from the electric company and tucked it into my pocket like a secret shame. I needed work, any work. A friend from church mentioned a discreet job through a cleaning agency, part-time home aide, and light housekeeping at a private residence in Lakeview, Northside, good pay under the table if I kept quiet. "The family values privacy," she said. "Don't ask questions." I didn't care. Privacy meant nothing when the lights were about to go dark, and my mother might be moved to a place that smelled like bleach and despair. I took the bus north, transferring twice, clutching my worn purse with the agency card inside. The ride took almost 2 hours. By the time I stepped off, my feet ached and my head throbbed from hunger. The address led to a gated estate on a quiet street lined with maple trees turning red and gold. The house rose like something from a magazine. 3 stories of pale stone, tall windows reflecting the gray October sky, a circular driveway with black luxury cars parked like silent guardians. I pressed the intercom buzzer, voice barely above a whisper. Elena Morales here for the cleaning position. A woman's voice answered, clipped. Gates opening. Come to the side entrance. Inside the silence hit me first. Not peaceful silence, the kind that presses against your ears, heavy and expectant. Marble floors gleamed under soft lights. A grand staircase curved upward. No music, no television murmur, no children's laughter echoing. Just the faint tick of a grandfather clock in the foyer. The housekeeper, Mrs. Callahan, met me, stern gray hair and a tight bun eyes that measured me like I might steal the silver. You'll clean. You'll assist with the child when needed. You'll stay quiet. Mr. Rossi doesn't tolerate disruptions, especially around his daughter. I nodded. Yes, ma'am. I understand. She studied me. The last girl got too attached. Tried to help the child. She was gone in days. You here to work? I'm here to work, ma'am, I said softly, eyes down. My voice came out timid, polite, the way it always did around people who held power over me. She led me through hallways lined with oil paintings, landscapes, family portraits, frozen in time. One caught my eye, a beautiful woman with dark hair, smiling, holding a toddler. Next to her, a fair-skinned man in a sharp suit looking hopeful. Between them, a little girl, maybe 3, then eyes wide and bright. The woman was gone now. I'd heard whispers on the bus ride up. Car accident, they said. Or something worse. No one spoke details. Then I saw her, Sofia, 8 years old, sitting alone on the sun porch steps, arranging wooden blocks in perfect rows. She didn't look up. Her shoulders hunched slightly, movements careful, precise. But what stopped my heart was the way she touched her right ear, quick, habitual, a tiny wince crossing her face each time. Pain. I knew that look. I'd seen it on my nephew years ago before a simple doctor's visit fixed what everyone else called permanent. My chest tightened. I wanted to kneel to ask if it hurt, but Mrs. Callahan's warning rang in my ears. I kept walking head down, but my mind whispered, pay attention. That evening back in my apartment, I lay on the thin mattress between my sleeping children, staring at the ceiling cracks. The wind rattled the windows. Cold seeped through the walls. I pulled the blanket tighter around Lila, who shivered even in sleep. My stomach growled empty. Tears came quietly. I didn't want to wake them. How could I bring them into a world like this? How could I leave a little girl like Sofia in silence when I knew what pain looked like? Across the city, in that grand Lakeview mansion, Vincent Rossi sat alone in his study. Fair-skinned, American-born, 42 years old. He carried the weight of an empire built on legitimate fronts. Waste management companies, construction firms that bid on city contracts and shadows. No one spoke of aloud. Wealth poured in private jets on standby accounts in the millions, suits tailored in Milan. But none of it touched the hollow place inside him. Sofia was all he had left. Born deaf specialists from Mayo Clinic to Johns Hopkins had run every test, charged fortunes, shaken their heads. Congenital, irreversible. He refused to believe it. He flew doctors in, paid for experimental therapies, wrote checks that could fund small countries. Yet every report ended the same, accept it. He couldn't. Not when he remembered her mother, my mother, though he didn't know it yet, dying in a hospital room 8 years ago after a night of reckless passion neither had planned. Complications, they said. He held her hand as life slipped away. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Just like Sofia would never hear him say her name. Guilt gnawed at him, relentless. If he'd chosen a different path, if he'd been less consumed by power, if he'd noticed the signs sooner. Remorse consumed him in waves, violent tearing at his chest when he passed Sofia's room and heard only silence. He paced the study, now fists clenched, staring at the portrait above the fireplace. The woman smiled forever. The child between them looked hopeful. Vincent's reflection in the glass showed a man breaking inside eyes, shadowed jaw tight with unspoken rage at a world that took everything soft and left him with stone. He didn't know the answer wasn't in another specialist or another check. It was coming from a woman so poor she measured meals in crumbs, a woman who would soon walk through his door, with nothing but willing hands and a heart that refused to look away. That night, as I finally drifted into uneasy sleep, hugging Marco and Lila close against the cold, I whispered into the dark, Lord, show me how to help someone. Anyone. Even if it's not me who gets saved. I didn't know yet that help would come both ways, fiercely, unexpectedly, tearing open wounds and healing them in the same breath. The days blurred into one long ache after I started working at the Rossi estate. October 16th, 2025. I woke before dawn in the Southside apartment, the wind howling through gaps in the window frames like a living thing trying to get in. Marco and Lila were still asleep, curled together under the single blanket that smelled faintly of mildew. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the electric bill notice, red letters screaming, final warning, 7 days until darkness. My mother's nursing home call replayed in my head. We'll have to transfer her soon, Elena. I'm sorry. Sorry didn't pay the fees. I dressed in the same faded jeans and long-sleeved sweater I'd worn yesterday, my only warm clothes, and slipped out without waking the children. Mrs. Nguyen from downstairs had promised to watch them for a few hours. She took payment in the form of the last box of macaroni and cheese I had left. I walked the 3 blocks to the bus stop in the dark, arms wrapped tight around myself against the cold that seeped into my bones. My shoes had holes in the soles. Every step on the cracked sidewalk sent a jolt of icy air up my legs. On the bus north, I pressed my forehead to the grimy window and watched the city change graffiti-covered walls giving way to cleaner streets, then to tree-lined avenues where houses had lawns instead of chain-link fences. By the time I reached Lakeview, the sky had lightened to a pale, unforgiving gray. The Rossi mansion looked even larger in daylight, gates gleaming, security cameras turning slowly like silent sentinels. Mrs. Callahan met me at the side door again. You're on time. Good. Start with the sun porch floors. Mr. Rossi will be out most of the day. I nodded, voice soft. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. She handed me a bucket and mop without another word. The sun porch was quiet sunlight slanting through tall windows onto the marble. Sofia sat in her usual spot on the steps, this time lining up small American flags she must have gotten from somewhere, tiny wooden sticks with stars and stripes. She didn't acknowledge me, but I noticed the way her right hand drifted to her ear again, pressing, wincing, pulling away. Each time it happened, my stomach twisted. I wanted to ask. I wanted to kneel and look closer. But I remembered Mrs. Callahan's warning, so I mopped in slow circles, keeping my distance, heart pounding with the unfairness of it all. Why did some children get silence while mine cried from hunger? Why did a little girl in a mansion full of doctors still hurt? The thoughts clawed at me, tearing deeper with every swipe of the mop. Across the city that same morning, Vincent Rossi stood on the rooftop terrace of one of his downtown office buildings, wind whipping his dark overcoat. Below him, Chicago spread out Lake Michigan, a steel-gray sheet, the skyline sharp against the low clouds. He held a burner phone to his ear, voice low and controlled. Tell Vitali, I want the shipment rerouted by tonight. No excuses. The man on the other end hesitated. Boss, he's pushing back, says the old roots compromised. Wants to meet you personally. Vincent's jaw tightened. Then tell him to be at the warehouse on Halsted at midnight. Alone. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, and stared out at the water. The view should have felt like power. Instead, it felt like a cage. Sofia's face kept rising in his mind, her small hand touching her ear, the doctor's voices overlapping. Irreversible, congenital. Accept it. He had accepted nothing. He had paid for second opinions, third, fourth. He had flown in specialists who charged $10,000 an hour. Every one of them left with the same verdict and another check. The guilt was a living thing inside him now, gnawing at his ribs. He remembered the night Sofia was conceived 9 years ago. A bar on Rush Street, a woman with kind eyes and a soft laugh who disappeared before morning. He never looked for her. He told himself it was cleaner that way. Then the hospital call came, complications, hemorrhage gone. He had held the infant while machines beeped and nurses whispered. Sofia never cried loud enough to fill the silence her mother left behind. He clenched the railing until his knuckles whitened. Remorse surged, violent, hot, blinding. If he had been different, if he hadn't chosen this life of shadows and leverage, maybe she would still be here. Maybe Sofia would hear his voice saying her name without pain in her eyes. His phone buzzed again. A text from one of his drivers, problem on the west side. Rival crew blocking the street. They want to talk. Vincent exhaled slowly. I'm on my way. He took the private elevator down, slid into the back of the black SUV waiting outside. The driver didn't speak. They drove west through neighborhoods where streetlights flickered, and men stood on corners watching every car that passed. At a narrow side street near Division 3, men stepped out from between parked vans, leather jackets, hands in pockets, eyes hard. The leader, a stocky man with a scar across his cheek, raised a hand. Rossi, he called. We need to discuss territory. Vincent stepped out of the SUV, coat open, no weapon visible. His voice was calm, almost polite. You block my route, you talk to me face to face. That's bold. Or stupid. The scarred man smirked. We're not here to fight. Yet, just want a bigger cut. Your waste trucks roll through our blocks like they own them. Vincent studied him for a long moment. Inside rage coiled tight. Another demand, another threat, another reminder that peace was an illusion he could never afford. But Sofia's face flashed again and something cracked. He didn't want blood on his hands today. Not when the house waited silent. 10% more, he said quietly. And you unblock the street. That's my final offer. The man laughed. You think Vincent stepped closer, voice dropping. I think you know what happens when I stop being reasonable. Silence stretched. The scarred man glanced at his crew, then nodded once. 10%. For now. Vincent turned, got back in the SUV. As they pulled away, his hands shook not from fear but from the violence he had swallowed. He leaned his head back, closed his eyes. Power felt heavier every day. Back at the mansion, I finished the sun porch and moved to the hallway. That's when I heard a soft thud from the garden door. I froze. Another sound muffled, almost a whimper. My heart jumped into my throat. I set the mop down quietly and walked toward the sound. Through the glass door, I saw Sofia on the stone bench outside, small body curled tight, both hands pressed to her right ear. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but no sound came out. Silent crying. The sight hit me like a fist. I pushed the door open before I could think. "Sofia, honey." She looked up, eyes red wide with pain. I knelt slowly, hands visible, voice barely a whisper. "It's okay. I'm here." She stared at me, breathing fast. I signed the little I knew, simple things I'd learned from watching videos late at night when I couldn't sleep. Hurt, she nodded, tears falling faster. My own eyes burned. "Can I see?" I signed, pointing to her ear. "Gentle. Promise." She hesitated, fear flickering. Then she leaned forward, trusting in a way that broke something inside me. I tilted her head toward the light. There it was, deep in the canal, something dark, swollen, pressing. My breath caught. I knew what it was. I'd seen it before in my nephew. A blockage. Not congenital. Fixable. Horror washed over me. How had no one seen this? How had doctors with machines worth millions missed something so obvious? Confusion spun in my head, dizzying. I felt the ground tilt for a second, numbness creeping up my arms. I signed slowly. Something in ear. Not supposed to be there. Her eyes went huge. "We tell Daddy?" I asked. Panic exploded across her face. She shook her head hard. "No doctors," she signed frantically. Hurt. Always hurt. My heart shattered. 8 years of prodding, poking promises that never came true. She had learned help meant pain. I took her small hands in mine. "I won't hurt you," I whispered. "Never." She stared at me, breathing, slowing. We sat like that until her tears dried, until the wind stopped feeling so cruel. Inside, I walked back to the hallway, legs unsteady. The contrast hit me harder than ever. The marble floors I polished. The silence I cleaned while my own children waited in a cold apartment for food I couldn't buy. Unfair didn't cover it. It was vicious. That night back home, the power flickered, warning before the cutoff. Marco asked for a story. I told him one about a brave girl who saved someone, voice trembling. Leela fell asleep, clutching Bunny. I sat against the wall, knees to chest, and cried without sound so they wouldn't wake. Across town, Vincent returned to the mansion after midnight. The house was dark except for one lamp in his study. He poured whiskey, stared at the portrait. Guilt rose again, sharper now, mixed with something new. He had noticed the new cleaner today. Thin, quiet eyes that saw too much. Something about her stirred him. Suspicion first, then curiosity, then a sudden burning ache he couldn't name. He set the glass down untouched. For the first time in years, he felt the possibility of something softer than power. It terrified him, and in that quiet moment, while wind rattled windows on both sides of the city, two hearts tore a little wider, waiting for the moment they would collide. October 17th, 2025, dawned colder than the day before. I woke to the sound of Marco coughing, dry, persistent, the kind that came from breathing too much dust and too little warmth. Lila stirred beside him, small hand, reaching for Bunny in the dark. The apartment was freezing. The radiator hissed once, then fell silent. I pulled the blanket over all three of us, but it did nothing against the wind that rattled the single pane of glass like someone trying to break in. I hadn't eaten since the morning before. My stomach had stopped growling and settled into a dull, constant burn. When I stood, the room tilted for a second, dizziness that made me grip the wall. My reflection in the cracked mirror over the sink showed hollow cheeks, eyes too large, and a face gone gray. 97 pounds now, maybe less. I couldn't weigh myself anymore. The scale had broken months ago, and I didn't have money for a new one. I dressed the children in every layer they owned, Marco in 2 sweatshirts, Leela in socks over socks, and walked them to Mrs. Nguyen's door. She opened it before I knocked, eyes soft with worry. She never spoke aloud. "Elena, you look like a ghost. Come in, eat something." "I can't," I whispered. "I have to go." The job, she pressed a foil-wrapped burrito into my hand left over from her son's food truck. "Take it. For the bus. Don't argue." Tears stung my eyes. I nodded, throat too tight for thanks. The burrito was warm against my palm. I ate half on the bus ride north, saving the rest for the children later. Each bite felt like stealing, even though it was given. The mansion welcomed me with the same heavy silence. "Mrs. Callahan handed me the cleaning schedule without greeting. "Library today. dust the shelves, polish the desk. Mr. Rossi is in meetings until evening. I carried the supplies upstairs, legs heavy. The library was vast walls of dark wood, leather-bound books that smelled of money and time, a massive desk with a single lamp burning low. On the desk sat a framed photograph, the same family portrait from the hallway but closer. The woman's smile was gentle, the little girl's eyes bright with trust. Vincent Rossi looked younger there, hopeful, almost soft. I stared too long, chest aching with something I couldn't name. I began dusting, moving carefully so the ladder didn't creak. That's when Sofia appeared in the doorway. She stood watching me, small fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. No sound, just presence. I paused, duster in hand. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, softly kneeling to her level. "You okay?" She didn't answer with words, but her eyes flicked to my face, then away. She touched her ear once quick, pained, and my heart squeezed. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small, folded paper crane I'd made on the bus from a receipt. Something simple, something American kids learn in school sometimes. I held it out. "For you." She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers brushed mine, cold, fragile. For a second our eyes met, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. Loneliness that didn't need sound to be understood. She tucked the crane into her pocket and left without a backward glance. But she had taken it. That small victory burned in my chest like a coal. Across the city, Vincent Rossi sat in the back of the SUV as it crawled through traffic on Michigan Avenue. Another meeting, this one with a city councilman who wanted campaign contributions in exchange for expedited permits on a new construction site. Vincent stared out the tinted window at pedestrians bundled against the wind at shop windows glowing with fall displays. Normal life. A life he had never really touched. His phone vibrated. A message from one of his lieutenants, Vitali's crew, was spotted near the warehouse last night. They didn't touch anything, but they were watching. Vincent's grip tightened on the phone. Suspicion coiled in his gut. Old, familiar, dangerous. Vitali had been loyal for years, but loyalty in this world had an expiration date. He typed back, "Double the watch." Eyes on him. He leaned back, closed his eyes. The image of the new cleaner rose unbidden, thin, quiet, moving through his house like a shadow with purpose. Elena. He had asked Mrs. Callahan her name yesterday. Why, he didn't know. Something about the way she looked at Sofia, not pity, not fear, but attention. Real attention. It unsettled him. Suspicion first, always suspicion in his world. Who was she really? Why had she taken the job? But suspicion gave way to curiosity, sharp and unwelcome. Then without warning, something hotter surged through him, a sudden burning need to see her again, to know what those tired eyes held when no one was watching. It felt like betrayal of his own guarded heart, of the armor he had worn for so long it had fused to his skin. He shook his head, furious at himself. He had no room for softness. Not now, not ever. That afternoon, as I polished the desk in the library, the door opened. Vincent stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, wearing a charcoal suit that fit like it was made for him alone, which it probably was. His presence filled the room. The air seemed to thicken. I froze, duster, mid-motion. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Mr. Rossi," I said, voice small and polite, eyes dropping to the floor. "I'm sorry, I'll finish quickly." He didn't speak at first. Just watched me. I felt the weight of his gaze, searching, intense. My hands trembled. The duster slipped, clattered to the floor. He bent, picked it up, handed it back. Our fingers brushed. A spark, sharp electric, shot up my arm. I jerked back, cheeks burning. "You're Elena," he said. Not a question. "Yes, sir." My voice came out barely audible. He studied me another moment. "You're good with Sofia." I swallowed. "I try to be kind, sir." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe gratitude, maybe something deeper. He nodded once, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "If she needs anything, tell me." "Yes, sir." "Thank you." He was gone. I sank onto the ladder, step legs weak. My pulse roared in my ears. Confusion spun through me. Why had he spoken to me? Why did his voice feel like it reached inside my chest and twisted? Fear followed. He was powerful, dangerous. I had heard the whispers even in my neighborhood, yet curiosity burned hotter. And beneath it all, something terrifying, a tiny, impossible spark of warmth. Like hope. That evening, the power in my apartment finally died. Darkness swallowed everything. Marco whimpered. Lila started to cry. I lit the last candle stub, held them close on the mattress. The wind howled louder, colder. I rocked them, singing softly until they slept. Then I sat in the dark, tears freezing on my cheeks. Unfair. So brutally unfair. A child in a mansion hurt in silence, while my own children shivered in the dark. A powerful man walked halls of marble while I counted crumbs. The contrast tore at me, violent, relentless. Across town, Vincent stood on his terrace overlooking the lake. Lights from the city glittered below like fallen stars. He thought of Elena, thin wrists, soft voice, the way she looked at Sofia like she could fix the world with kindness alone. Suspicion lingered, but it was losing ground. In its place rose something fierce, consuming an overwhelming surge he hadn't felt in years. Love at first sight, irrational burning. It terrified him. He clenched the railing knuckles white. He had built an empire on control. Now control was slipping because of a woman who cleaned his floors and looked at his daughter with more care than anyone else ever had. Inside, remorse clashed with this new fire, violent conflict tearing him open. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to keep her far away. He wanted her close enough to touch. He turned back inside, the wind cold against his skin. Tomorrow he would watch her again. Tomorrow everything might change. And in the darkness of my frozen apartment, I whispered to the dying candle flame, "Lord, if there's mercy left, let it find us soon." Neither of us knew yet how close. Mercy already stood watching, waiting, burning. October 18th, 2025, the cold had teeth. I woke to Marco's cough, turning wetter overnight, a sound that clawed at my insides. Lila pressed her small body against mine for warmth. Bunny squished between us. The apartment was an icebox. Frost patterned the inside of the window like delicate lace. I couldn't afford to admire. I hadn't slept again. My body felt hollow, lightheaded every time I stood. When I tried to make oatmeal from the last packet, my hands shook so badly the spoon clattered against the bowl. I fed the children first, scraping every flake into their bowls, adding tap water to stretch it. They ate quietly, eyes big and trusting. I told them Mama had to work, that Mrs. Nguyen would keep them warm today. Marco asked if we could turn the heat on soon. I smiled the smile that hurt and said soon. Lies tasted like ash. On the bus north, I clutched the half-eaten burrito from yesterday, now cold and stiff. I ate the rest in tiny bites, rationing it against the nausea that came with hunger. My reflection in the bus window looked like a stranger. Sunken eyes, lips cracked, skin stretched tight over bones. 96 pounds, I guessed. Maybe less. The disparity hit harder each day. I cleaned marble that cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes while my children slept on a mattress that sagged to the floor. At the mansion, the warmth enveloped me like a betrayal. Radiant heat hummed through the floors. Fresh coffee scented the air from a machine that probably cost more than my rent for a year. Mrs. Callahan assigned me the sun porch again. Mr. Rossi wants it spotless. He'll be home early. I nodded, voice soft. Yes, ma'am. Sofia was already there, sitting cross-legged on the rug. The paper crane I'd given her yesterday, balanced on her knee. She looked up when I entered, actually looked, and something small and bright flickered in her eyes. She patted the rug beside her. My heart stuttered. I set the cleaning supplies down quietly and sat knees drawn up, careful not to touch anything expensive. She held out the crane, then pointed to me, then to herself. A question. I smiled gently. You like it? She nodded once, emphatic. I reached into my pocket, empty except for lint and a single folded receipt. I tore a strip from it, folded another simple shape, a tiny boat. I placed it in her palm. She examined it, then set it beside the crane like treasures. For the next hour, we built a silent world. Folded paper, animals drawn lines on scrap paper I found in the trash bin, small gestures that needed no sound. She tapped her chest twice when she was happy. I learned to mirror it. When she pointed to the sky outside, I signed clouds slow and careful. She copied me, clumsy but determined. Each moment felt stolen, precious, dangerous. In the hallway, later carrying a stack of folded linens, I nearly collided with Vincent. He stopped, short eyes locking on mine. Time slowed. His gaze traveled over me, my thin sweater hanging loose, the way my shoulders hunched against invisible cold, and something raw flashed across his face. "You're freezing," he said. Not a question. I dropped my eyes. "I'm fine, sir." "Thank you." He reached out hesitant, then pulled a soft cashmere throw from a nearby chair. The fabric felt like a cloud against my skin. He draped it over my shoulders without asking permission. "Keep it," he murmured. "You need it more." My breath caught. The warmth seeped in, but so did confusion, sharp, dizzying. Why him? Why me? I felt exposed, small, unworthy. Yet the gesture burned through me like sunlight after endless night. "Thank you," I whispered, voice trembling. "Really?" He nodded once, jaw tight, then walked away. But I saw it the way his hand flexed at his side, as if touching me had cost him something. That afternoon, he left for the city again. Another confrontation waited. On a shadowed side street near the river, 3 men from a rival crew leaned against a black sedan, blocking the loading dock Vincent's trucks needed. The leader, tall, tattooed neck, stepped forward when Vincent's SUV rolled up. "Rossi," he called. We got business. Vincent stepped out alone, coat open, hands visible. Move your car. My trucks are due. The man smirked. Not until we talk terms. Your roots cut through our turf. We want half. Vincent's voice stayed even. You get what we agreed. Nothing more. Tension crackled. One of the men shifted hand, drifting toward his jacket. Vincent didn't flinch. Inside, rage boiled, familiar, violent, but he thought of Sofia's quiet afternoon, of Elena's thin frame under that throw, and swallowed the impulse to end this with force. 20% more, he said quietly. Last offer. The leader laughed. You're going soft, Rossi. Family man. Now Vincent's eyes narrowed. Move. Or we do this the hard way. Silence stretched. The leader glanced at his crew, then jerked his head. The sedan pulled aside. Vincent returned to the SUV, pulse hammering. Soft. The word echoed mocking. He had never been soft. Yet every time he thought of her, Elena, something cracked wider inside him. Suspicion had burned away. In its place roared an overwhelming surge, passionate, intense, consuming. Love. From the first real look. It terrified him. He wanted to shield her from his world, yet he wanted her in it. The conflict tore at him, violent, relentless remorse for every life he'd touched, with shadow clashing against this new burning need to protect something pure. Back home that evening, I finished my shift and took the bus south. The power was still off. The apartment dark and frigid. Marco's cough had worsened. Lila's cheeks were flushed. I wrapped them in the cashmere throw Vincent had given me, soft, smelling faintly of expensive cologne, and held them close on the mattress. Tears came silently. The blanket was too beautiful for this place, humiliating in its kindness. I felt like an intruder in my own life, thin, shivering, powerless, yet carrying a piece of his world against my skin. Across the city, Vincent stood in Sofia's doorway, watching her sleep with the paper boat clutched in her small hand. He thought of Elena's timid voice, her guarded eyes that sometimes softened when she looked at his daughter. The surge hit again, fierce, protective, aching. He wanted to give her everything: heat, food, safety. He wanted to pull her close and never let go. But guilt surged back, gnawing, vicious. What right did a man like him have to touch someone so fragile? What right to hope? He turned away, fists clenched. Tomorrow he would find a way to see her again. Tomorrow the walls he'd built might crumble a little more. In the freezing dark, I whispered to my sleeping children, "We'll be okay." Somehow. Neither of us knew how quickly the somehow was coming, how one small connection, one folded boat, one draped blanket, was already unraveling everything. October 19th, 2025, broke with rain that lashed the windows of my Southside apartment like accusations. The power remained off. The darkness felt permanent now. Marco's cough had deepened into something ragged and frightening during the night. I held him against my chest until dawn, feeling each labored breath shake his small frame. Lila woke crying from hunger. I gave her the last spoonful of peanut butter scraped from the jar bottom, telling her it was a special treat. My own stomach had long since stopped protesting. It simply ached, a constant hollow throb. I hadn't eaten in 36 hours. When I stood to dress, black spots danced at the edges of my vision. I leaned against the wall, waiting for the dizziness to pass, one hand pressed to my forehead. 95 pounds, I thought dimly. Or less. The mirror showed a ghost, cheeks hollowed to shadows, eyes bruised with exhaustion. Sleep had become a stranger. The cold wind sneaked through every crack, stealing what little rest I could steal. Yet I had to go north. The paycheck, small under the table, was the only thread keeping us from complete collapse. The bus ride felt endless. Rain streaked the windows. Passengers huddled in wet coats. I clutched the cashmere throw Vincent had given me, folded tight in my bag like contraband. It smelled faintly of him, clean, expensive, safe. Wearing it now would have felt like pretending I belonged somewhere I didn't. At the mansion, warmth wrapped around me the moment I stepped inside. Fresh flowers stood in crystal vases. A fire crackled low in the foyer hearth. Mrs. Callahan barely glanced at me. Sun porch again. Sofia's been asking for you quietly, of course. My heart lifted, then sank under the weight of guilt. Asking for me, a child in silence reaching for someone as broken as I was. Sofia waited on the rug, surrounded by our paper, menagerie cranes, boats, a tiny folded dog I'd taught her yesterday. She looked up, eyes brightening in that small, careful way. She patted the spot beside her. I sat, knees drawn up, voice barely above a whisper. "Good morning, sweetheart." She signed hello, the sign I'd shown her, and tapped her chest twice. Happy. We played quietly. She showed me a new drawing, stick figures under a big sun, one tall, one small, holding hands. Me and her, I realized. Tears pricked my eyes before I could stop them. Then it happened. She reached up to scratch her ear, habitual, quick, and winced sharply this time. Her whole body tensed. Her free hand flew to cover the hurt. A silent gasp opened her mouth. I froze. Sofia, does it hurt bad? She nodded, tears welling fast. She pressed harder as if she could push the pain away. Something inside me snapped, not anger but a fierce protective clarity. I signed slowly. Can I look, please? I'll be so gentle. She hesitated, fear flickering. Then she leaned toward me, trusting again in that heartbreaking way. I tilted her head carefully toward the window light. Rain blurred the glass, but the illumination was enough. Deep inside the ear canal, dark, dense, glistening like wet clay. Something lodged, swollen, pressing against the delicate walls. Not wax. Not infection alone. A blockage. Years old. Impacted. Obstructing everything. My breath stopped. Horror flooded me, cold, numbing, dizzying. How? How had specialists with machines that cost millions, with degrees framed in gold, missed this? How had scans circled in red, notations made and no one acted? Confusion spun into disbelief, then rage not, at Sofia, never at her, but at a world that let a child suffer in silence because no one looked closely enough. I signed hands, trembling. There's something inside, something blocking. It shouldn't be there. Her eyes widened, shock, then hope, then terror. I sat back, heart hammering so hard it hurt. Memories crashed in my nephew at 6 deaf for years after an ear infection no one treated properly until one doctor finally looked with a light and a curette. One simple removal. Sound returned like a miracle. Sofia's case was worse, older, deeper, but the principle was the same. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Numbness crept up my arms. I gripped the rug to steady myself. Pain lanced through my chest, not physical but something deeper. Violent, tearing. How could I do nothing? How could I walk away knowing, yet how could I act? I was nobody. A cleaner. Thin, hungry one, missed paycheck from losing everything. If I touched her and something went wrong, if I hurt her, Vincent would destroy me. Not figuratively, literally. I had heard enough whispers in the city to know what men like him did to threats. Fear clawed up my throat. Anxiety made my vision tunnel. I saw my children, Marco coughing, Leela hungry, and felt horror at the thought of them left alone if I was taken away. Still, the image of that dark mass burned behind my eyes. Unjust. Absurdly, cruelly unjust. A billionaire's daughter suffering because no one paid attention while I scraped by on nothing, watching my own children fade. Quiet settled between us, condensed, heavy. Sofia watched me waiting. I signed. We should tell your daddy. Panic exploded across her face. She shook her head violently. No doctors, she signed over and over. Hurt. Always hurt. Never help. My heart shattered again into smaller, sharper pieces. 8 years of pain disguised as care. 8 years of prodding and promises that never arrived. I took her hands. I won't let anyone hurt you, I whispered. I promise. She stared at me, tears slowing. Something shifted in her eyes, trust, fragile but real. I stayed with her until she relaxed, until the rain softened outside. Then I stood on shaking legs and walked back to the hallway, supplies forgotten. Across the city that afternoon, Vincent sat in a dimly lit back room of a restaurant on Taylor Street, neutral ground. 3 men waited, Vitaly and 2 of his lieutenants. The air smelled of garlic and tension. Vitaly leaned forward. We need to talk about the new routes, boss. Your trucks are slowing everything down. Vincent's voice was ice. You're slowing them, blocking streets, watching warehouses. Vitaly smiled, thin, dangerous. Just protecting interests. You've been distracted lately. Family ties. New. Help around the house. Vincent's pulse spiked. Careful. Vitaly raised his hands. Just saying. A man in your position can't afford weakness. The words landed like a blade. Weakness. The same accusation that echoed in Vincent's own head every time he thought of Elena. He felt the surge again, passionate, burning, overwhelming. Love. Fierce. From the moment she draped that throw over her thin shoulders and looked at him with guarded wonder. He wanted to shield her from this room, from this life, from men like Vitaly, who saw softness as a target. Remorse clashed violently inside him, gnawing guilt for every choice that brought him here, for every shadow he cast. Yet the need to protect her, to give her warmth, safety, everything tore at him harder than any rival ever had. He stood. Routes stay as agreed. You step out of line again, we don't talk next time. He walked out into the raincoat, collar up, heart pounding. Suspicion of Vitaly hardened into certainty. But stronger still was the pull toward Lakeview, toward a woman who saw his daughter when no one else did. That night, back in the frozen apartment, I sat against the wall with Marco and Lila asleep in my lap. The cashmere throw covered us. It was the only warmth we had. Tears fell silently, hot, endless. The unfairness felt like a physical weight crushing my chest. I had seen the blockage. I knew what it meant, and I knew I couldn't walk away. In the mansion, Vincent stood in the darkened hallway outside Sofia's room, listening to her quiet breathing. He thought of Elena, her timid voice, her trembling hands, the way she looked at his daughter with something close to love. The conflict inside him raged remorse for his past terror at his present, and this new consuming fire for a woman he barely knew yet couldn't stop thinking about. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow he would speak to her again. Tomorrow the discovery would no longer be hidden, and everything would break open. October 20th, 2025. The rain had stopped, but the cold lingered like a promise of worse to come. I woke curled on the floor beside the mattress because Marco's cough had kept me sitting up most of the night, rubbing his back in slow circles until my own shoulders screamed. Lila had whimpered in her sleep, reaching for me even in dreams. The apartment smelled of damp plaster and unwashed blankets. Frost rimed the windows again thicker now. When I tried to stand, my knees buckled true, buckling the kind that sent me sliding down the wall in a heap. Blackness edged my vision. Numbness spread from my fingertips upward. 94 pounds, perhaps. I hadn't weighed myself in weeks, but the mirror didn't lie collarbones sharp enough to cut glass wrists fragile as twigs. No food left. The pantry shelf stared back empty, except for an unopened packet of saltines I'd hidden for emergencies. I broke it open, gave half to the children, ate 2 crackers myself, dry tasteless, sticking in my throat. Marco asked why Mama wasn't eating more. I lied again, voice soft. Mama's not very hungry today, baby. The lie tasted worse than the crackers. Mrs. Nguyen knocked softly. She brought a small thermos of soup chicken noodle steaming. For the boy, she said. And you. Eat, Elena. You're fading. I took it with shaking hands. Tears burned behind my eyes. Gratitude and shame twisted together until I could barely breathe. I fed Marco spoonfuls while Lila watched with wide eyes. Then I dressed in the same thin sweater, wrapped the cashmere throw around my shoulders like armor, and left for the bus. The ride north felt longer every day. My head rested against the cold glass. I watched the city blur past boarded-up storefronts, giving way to gleaming towers. The contrast sliced deeper now. Here I was carrying a child's pain in my mind, while my own children waited in the dark for soup that might run out tomorrow. Unjust didn't begin to describe it. Cruel. Absurd. A little girl in a mansion full of doctors suffered because no one looked twice, while I, powerless, penniless, knew exactly what needed doing and could do nothing without risking everything. At the mansion, warmth hit like a slap. Freshly baked bread scented the kitchen. Sunlight poured through tall windows onto polished floors. Mrs. Callahan nodded curtly. Sun porch. Sofia's been waiting. My heart clenched. Waiting. For me. She sat on the steps again, paper animals arranged in a careful circle around her. When she saw me, she stood small, unsteady, and ran the few steps to hug my legs. The embrace was brief, fierce. I knelt, arms around her thin frame, and felt her heartbeat against mine, fast trusting. Something inside me cracked wide open. We sat together. She signed the new words I'd taught her friends, safe, thank you. Each one landed like a stone in still water, rippling through me. But every few minutes her hand drifted to her ear, press, wince, pull away. The dark mass was still there. I could almost see it behind my eyes, swollen, blocking sound, stealing joy. The dilemma settled over me like lead. If I did nothing, Sofia would keep hurting, silent tears, silent pain, silent life. I knew the fix: sterilized tweezers, gentle pressure, a steady hand. I'd watched the procedure on my nephew years ago. I remembered every step. But I was no doctor. No training. If I slipped, if I caused bleeding, infection worse, Vincent would never forgive me. Guards would drag me away. My children would be alone. Marco's cough. Lila's hunger. The nursing home letter for my mother. All of it would collapse. Fear rose sharp and suffocating. Anxiety made my pulse race. Dizziness returned in waves. I felt disoriented, as if the marble floor beneath me might give way at any moment. Horror followed the image of Sofia in more pain because of me. Confusion spun, why me? Why had God or fate let me see what experts missed? Why burden a woman who could barely feed her own children with this choice? Yet the alternative, walking away, felt like betrayal. Of Sofia. Of the part of me that had promised, after watching my brother die young from untreated illness, never to stand by while a child suffered. Never again. Quiet descended, condensed, heavy. Sofia leaned against me, head on my shoulder. She tapped her chest twice. Happy. Safe. With me. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I wiped them away quickly, but not before she noticed. She touched my face, gentle, curious, then signed okay. I nodded, throat too tight for words. I'm okay, sweetheart. Just thinking. Across town that afternoon, Vincent stood on a loading dock near the stockyards, rain beginning again in cold slanting sheets. Two men from a competing outfit waited under an awning, wet coats, hard eyes. You're late, the taller one said. Vincent stepped closer, voice low. You wanted to talk. Talk. We want the Southside contracts. All of them. Your trucks stop rolling through our blocks or we make sure nothing rolls at all. Vincent's jaw tightened. Inside, rage coiled, familiar, violent, but it tangled with something new, exhaustion. Not from the threat, but from carrying it alone. He thought of Sofia's small hand in Elena's yesterday, of the way Elena's eyes softened when she looked at his daughter. The surge hit again, passionate, burning, overwhelming. Love. Fierce. Protective. He wanted to end this life of shadows so he could offer her light. Yet remorse surged back, gnawing, vicious, for every deal sealed in darkness. Every rival intimidated. Every choice that kept him from being the father. Sofia deserved the man Elena might one day trust. Walk away, he said quietly. Last warning. The men exchanged glances. The taller one laughed short, sharp. You're distracted, Rossi. Family makes a man weak. Vincent stepped forward until they were inches apart. Family makes a man dangerous. Silence stretched. The men backed off slowly, grudgingly. Vincent watched them go rain, soaking his coat. His hands shook not from cold but from the war inside, the need to protect Elena and Sofia clashing against the life he had built. He wanted out. For them, the conflict tore deeper than any blade. That night, back in the mansion, he stood outside the sun porch door watching Elena and Sofia through the glass. Elena signed slowly. Sofia laughed, silent but real. Vincent's chest ached. The love burned hotter, intense, consuming. He wanted to walk in, pull her close, promise her the world. Instead, he turned away, fists clenched. In my apartment that night, power still off. I sat on the floor with Marco and Lila under the cashmere throw. Marco's fever had started low, but climbing. I pressed my forehead to his whispering prayers. I barely believed anymore. The decision crystallized in the dark. If Sofia showed pain again, real pain, I would act. I would trust what I had seen, what I knew, even if it cost me everything. I thought of my grandmother's words spoken years ago when life felt impossible. God doesn't call the equipped baby girl. He equips the called. My hands were willing, trembling, hungry, powerless, but willing. I closed my eyes, tears slipping into my hair. The inner tearing reached a new pitch, violent, relentless. Fear and resolve battled inside me until I felt split open. Across the city, Vincent lay awake in his vast bed, staring at the ceiling. Elena's face filled his mind, thin, guarded, beautiful in its quiet strength. The love surged again, fierce, protective, aching. He wanted to shield her from cold, from hunger, from the world that had hurt her so deeply. Remorse clashed harder than ever. What right did he have? Yet the answer came quietly in the stillness. Perhaps the only right that mattered was the one born of love. Tomorrow, if pain came, everything would change. And neither of us could turn back. October 21st, 2025. The wind had turned vicious overnight, howling through the gaps in my apartment walls, like it wanted to tear the building down. I woke to Marco's fever burning hot against my side. He tossed fitfully, small body slick with sweat despite the cold room. Lila clung to me, shivering, her little fingers knotted in the cashmere throw that now felt like a cruel joke. Luxury pressed against poverty so extreme it mocked us both. My own body ached in every joint. Sleep had been a series of shallow gasps between coughing spells and the constant gnawing hunger that made my thoughts fuzzy and slow. When I tried to rise, the room spun violently. I caught myself on the edge of the mattress, breath coming in short, painful bursts. 93 pounds, I guessed, maybe less. My arms looked like sticks. My reflection in the darkened window showed eyes too large, too haunted. No food, no medicine. The last of the saltines were gone. I pressed my forehead to Marco's burning skin and whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Mama's going to fix this. Somehow. The words tasted like dust. I left them with Mrs. Nguyen again. She took one look at Marco and pressed a bottle of children's fever reducer into my hand, the last of her own supply. Go to work, Elena. I'll watch them. But hurry back tonight. The bus ride north blurred. Rain started again, cold and relentless. I huddled in my seat, the throw wrapped tight around me, trying not to think about how thin it made me look, how fragile, how utterly out of place I would be in that mansion of marble and warmth. When I arrived, Mrs. Callahan was waiting at the side door, face tighter than usual. Mr. Rossi is away until late. Sofia's in the sun porch. She's not herself today. My stomach dropped. Sofia sat on the stone bench just inside the garden door, knees drawn to her chest, both hands clamped over her right ear. Her face was pale, eyes glassy with pain. No tears yet, just silent, rigid suffering. The sight hit me like a physical blow. I dropped my cleaning supplies without a word and crossed the room in 3 strides. "Sofia, sweetheart." She looked up. Her lips trembled. A single tear escaped. She signed one word, frantic. "Hurt." I knelt in front of her hands, shaking so badly I had to press them to my thighs to steady them. "Let me see, please." She leaned forward slowly, trust flickering through the fear. I tilted her head gently toward the light from the tall windows. The dark mass was worse, swollen, darker, pressing harder. It glistened, wetly angry. The pain must have been excruciating. Horror crashed over me, cold, suffocating. My vision narrowed. Dizziness swept in so fast I nearly lost balance. I gripped the bench edge, knuckles white. Numbness spread through my chest. This was it, the moment I had dreaded and prayed for in equal measure. I signed slowly, voice barely a whisper. "I can take it out. I think I can. But it might hurt a little. Will you trust me?" Her eyes searched mine wide, terrified but steady. She nodded once, small, brave. My heart shattered and reformed in the same breath. I reached into the small first aid kit I had started carrying 3 days ago, sterilized tweezers, gauze, antiseptic wipes hidden in my bag like a secret sin. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I wiped them on my jeans, took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. "Lord," I whispered, so quiet only he could hear, "guide my hands." "Please." Sofia watched me, breathing fast. I signed, "Look at me. Breathe with me. In. Out." She copied, small chest rising and falling. I steadied her head with one hand, gentle as I could manage. With the other, I eased the tweezers toward the canal, slow, careful, praying every second. The mass resisted at first, dense, sticky. Panic flared in my throat. If I pulled too hard, I hooked it gently. Pulled. Resistance. Then release. It slid free, dark, wet, biological years of buildup that had stolen her world of sound. It landed in my palm. I stared at it, stomach turning. Before I could react, Sofia gasped. Real audible sharp. Her hand flew to her ear. Her eyes flew wide, wider than I had ever seen them. She sat bolt upright, looking around the sun porch as if seeing it for the first time. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steady clear. Her mouth opened. A rough, broken sound came out. "Tick," she whispered. Tears flooded my eyes. "Yes, baby. That's the clock. You can hear it." Her whole body trembled. She touched her throat, felt the vibration of her own voice. Wonder flooded her face, pure dazzling. She opened her mouth again. One word. The first real word in 8 years. "Daddy." I sobbed, quiet, broken. I pulled her close, holding her as she shook. Sounds flooded her, the rain against the windows, the distant hum of the furnace, her own breathing. She clung to me, small fists in my sweater. "You can hear," I whispered into her hair. "Thank you, Jesus. You can hear." She pulled back, eyes shining. She signed and spoke at once, voice rough, unpracticed, beautiful. "Thank you." I cupped her face. "You were always worth hearing, sweetheart. Always." Footsteps heavy, fast, echoed down the hallway. I looked up. Vincent stood in the doorway. His coat dripped rain. His face was white as death. His eyes locked on Sofia, curled against me, tears streaming but alive with sound. Then on my hands, blood from a small nick on my finger, the dark mass in my palm, the tweezers on the bench. "What have you done?" His voice cracked the air. He rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside us, hands reaching for Sofia. "Baby Sofia." She flinched at the volume, new, overwhelming, then reached for his face. Her voice, small, cracked, perfect, spoke again. "Daddy, I can hear you." Vincent froze. His entire body went rigid. What she touched his cheek. "Your voice. Is that your voice?" His legs buckled. He sank fully to the floor, pulling her into his arms. For the first time in 8 years, she heard him sob, raw, ragged, real. But his gaze snapped to me. To the blood. To the tweezers. Terror overtook wonder. "Security," he bellowed. 2 guards appeared instantly. "Get her away from my daughter." I didn't resist. My legs wouldn't hold me anyway. As they pulled me up, I looked back at Sofia. "It's okay," I mouthed. "You're going to be okay," she screamed, loud, desperate, real. "No, don't take her," the sound stopped, Vincent cold. But fear won. "Take her to the security office. Call. Whoever needs calling." They dragged me away. My feet barely touched the marble. The hallway blurred, dizzy, numb, spinning. Pain lanced through my chest, not from the guards, but from the tearing inside love for that little girl, terror for my own children, shame that I had dared to act. In the small security room, I sat alone, hands folded, head bowed. I wasn't praying for myself. I prayed for Sofia, that her hearing would stay, that her father would understand, that my children would be safe tonight. The door opened. Vincent stood there, but he wasn't the same man who had ordered me taken. His eyes were red, his face broken. He looked like a man who had just watched his world end and begin again in the same heartbeat. "Elena," he said, soft, almost reverent. I stood, legs unsteady. "Mr. Rossi, I can explain." "Don't." He stepped closer. "Don't explain. Don't apologize." He stopped in front of me. And this powerful man, this man who commanded empires, dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down his face. I saw the blockage. Years ago, the doctors, they noted it and left it, because my money kept coming, because my desperation paid better than a cure. His voice cracked. I trusted them. I threw everything at this problem and never looked close enough. He looked up at me, eyes raw, pleading. "But you did. You saw her. You saw her pain when no one else would." My own tears fell. "I just loved her, sir. That's all." He shook his head. "That's everything." He rose slowly. "I've spent years trying to buy miracles. God sent one through the woman who cleaned my floors." I wiped my eyes. "He uses the willing, Mr. Rossi. That's what my grandmother always said." He nodded. She was right. We walked back to the sun porch together. Sofia sat on the bench, now listening to the rain-head, tilted wonder on her face. When she saw us, she ran straight to me. She wrapped her arms around my waist. "Thank you," she said, voice rough, beautiful. I knelt, held her tight. "You were always worth it, baby. Always." She pulled back, looked at her father. "Daddy, I can hear your heart. It's beating fast." Vincent dropped to his knees again, pulled her close. For the first time in 8 years, she heard him cry, and I stood quietly beside them, finally letting myself breathe. The storm inside me hadn't ended. But for this moment, in the warmth of that room, something had begun. The security office door closed behind me with a soft final click. The room was small, windowless, lit by a single overhead bulb that buzzed faintly like an insect trapped in glass. I sat on the metal chair they had pushed me toward, hands folded in my lap, the tweezers and gauze still clutched in my fingers, until one of the guards gently pried them away. My sweater sleeve was stained with a thin line of blood from the small cut on my finger. It had stopped bleeding, but the red smear looked obscene against the pale fabric. I didn't cry. Not yet. I sat very still, listening to the distant sounds of the mansion. Footsteps overhead, a door closing somewhere far away, and tried to breathe through the storm inside my chest. Every few seconds, the image replayed Sofia's gasp, her first word, Vincent's face when he saw the blood. Horror washed over me again and again, cold waves that left me dizzy, numb at the edges. My legs trembled under the table. I pressed my knees together to stop them. 93 pounds of bone and fear, sitting in a billionaire's security room waiting to be arrested for trying to help a child. The unfairness of it clawed at me, violent, relentless. I had cleaned his floors, folded his linens, carried his silence for days while my own children shivered in the dark. Now this, Marco's fever, Lila's empty stomach, my mother's nursing home clock ticking down. If they took me tonight, who would hold them? Who would feed them tomorrow? The thought sent a fresh spike of pain through my ribs, sharp tearing. I closed my eyes, whispered a prayer so quiet it barely moved my lips. "Lord, keep them safe, please." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The door opened. Vincent stood there alone. His coat was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with tension. His face was ravaged, eyes red-rimmed, jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. He looked like a man who had been punched in the soul. "Elena," he said again, softer this time. The word carried weight. I stood because it felt respectful, though my knees threatened to give out. "Mr. Rossi." "I didn't mean to." He raised a hand. "Stop." He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The room shrank. His presence filled it, wealth in the cut of his clothes, power in the way he moved, pain in the way he looked at me. He crossed to the table, pulled out the other chair, sat. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at his hands, large, scarred in places I hadn't noticed before, as if they belonged to someone else. Then he spoke, voice low and cracked. "The hospital just called. They ran every test again. The blockage, it was there. On scans from 3 years ago. Circled, noted, recommend immediate removal. No follow-up, no procedure scheduled." He looked up. His eyes were wet. "They left it. because I kept paying for ongoing evaluations, because every visit, every scan, every consultation kept the checks coming. They profited from my daughter's silence. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of horror spread through me. I pressed a hand to my mouth to hold back the sound that wanted to escape. Vincent's voice dropped lower. I trusted them. I threw millions at the problem and never once asked to see the actual images myself. I was too busy, being powerful. Remorse rolled off him in waves, gnawing violent, tearing him open in front of me. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, head bowed. I almost lost her because of my arrogance. And I almost lost you because of my fear. I stared at him, confusion swirling with shock. Me, he lifted his head. Sofia won't stop asking for you. She's saying your name over and over. She heard it for the first time today. Your name. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I wiped them away, quickly ashamed. Vincent reached across the table, slow, careful, and covered my trembling hand with his. His palm was warm. Steady. The touch sent a jolt through me, electric, terrifying, comforting all at once. I'm sorry, he whispered. For the guards, for the accusation, for everything. I shook my head, voice small and broken. I understand. You were scared. She's your daughter. She's our daughter. The words hung in the air, impossible, impossible. I blinked. What? He pulled a thin folder from inside his jacket, hospital paperwork, fresh printouts. He slid it toward me. They ran a full panel. Sofia's blood type. It didn't match what they had on file from 8 years ago. They asked for mine again to confirm. Then hers. He opened the folder. A single-sheet DNA comparison chart. Percentages. Probabilities. 99. 9,998% match. He read quietly. Biological father Vincent Rossi. Biological mother Elena Morales. The room tilted. I gripped the table edge. Dizziness crashed over me, violent, disorienting. Numbness spread from my fingertips to my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 9 years ago. A night on Rush Street. A man with kind eyes in a bar full of shadows. Laughter. Heat. A hotel room. Then mourning him gone before I woke. I never looked for him. I told myself it was better that way. Safer. I was 23 working double shifts at a diner, barely surviving. When the test came back positive, I kept her. Named her Sofia after my grandmother. Raised her alone. Never told anyone who the father was because the truth felt too dangerous, too impossible. I stared at the paper, then at him. You're... He nodded once. Slow. Broken. I didn't know, he said. I swear to God I didn't know. She disappeared. I thought she left. I never searched. I was too deep in my own life, my own mistakes. His voice cracked. I left you alone with her. With everything. The confession tore something loose inside me. Shock gave way to pain, deep wrenching. All those years. All that struggle. Marco and Lila born later from a brief, kind relationship that ended when he couldn't handle my life. My mother's decline. The evictions. The hunger. The cold nights when I held Sofia close and whispered that we would be okay, never knowing her father was alive, wealthy, powerful, just miles away. I stood suddenly. The chair scraped. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. You didn't know, I echoed, voice small, trembling. But I did. I carried her. I raised her. Alone. Vincent rose too slow, careful, like approaching something wild and wounded. I know, he said, and I hate myself for it. He stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that I could feel the heat of him against the cold that lived in my bones. I've spent years building walls. Power, money, control, because it was easier than feeling anything. But you walked in here with nothing, no money, no safety, no armor, and you saw my daughter when I couldn't. You loved her when I failed her. His eyes searched mine, raw, pleading. And now I see you. The surge in him was visible, passionate, intense, burning. Love. From the first real moment he had looked at me and seen more than a cleaner. It terrified him. It terrified me. I slid down the wall until I sat on the floor, knees to chest. Tears came hard now, silent, shaking sobs. The disparity crushed me, him in his tailored shirt, me in my threadbare sweater stained with my own blood. Him with empires. Me with nothing but willing hands and a heart that wouldn't quit. He knelt in front of me, slowly, reverently. I don't deserve forgiveness, he whispered. But I'm asking for a chance, to make this right, for Sofia, for you, for whatever this is between us. I looked at him, really looked, the powerful man on his knees. The father who hadn't known. the stranger who had just become everything. Confusion, fear, wonder collided inside me, violent tearing. I don't know what to feel, I admitted, voice small, broken. I'm scared. I'm so scared, he nodded. I know. He reached out, hesitant, and brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. The touch was gentle, reverent. But you're not alone anymore, he said. Not tonight. Not ever again if you'll let me. I closed my eyes. The inner storm raged remorse for years, lost terror of what came next, and beneath it all, a tiny, fragile spark hope. Across town, my children waited in the dark. Here in this small room, something impossible had begun. Vincent stood, offered his hand. I stared at it, large, steady, scarred. Then slowly I took it. He helped me up, held on a moment longer than necessary. Come see her, he said quietly. She's asking for her mama. Mama. The word pierced me. We walked back through the mansion halls, his hand still holding mine. Sofia waited in the sun porch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide and shining. When she saw me, she ran. Mama, she said, voice rough, perfect. I dropped to my knees. Held her so tight I thought I might break. Vincent knelt beside us, wrapped his arms around both of us. For the first time in 8 years, Sofia heard 2 heartbeats, hers mine, his beating together. And in that quiet, condensed stillness, the world shifted. Not fixed, not easy, but changed, forever. October 22nd, 2025. The mansion held its breath. Rain had returned in soft, steady sheets against the tall windows. But inside, the air felt warmer, thicker, charged with something new and fragile. Sofia sat between us on the sun porch bench, her small body pressed against my side. Vincent's arm draped protectively around both of us. She kept tilting her head, listening to the rain, to our breathing, to the low hum of the house settling around us. Every few minutes she would whisper a new word, rain, warm, mama, daddy, testing them like treasures pulled from deep water. Her voice was still rough, still learning its own shape, but each sound felt like a miracle carved from silence. I held her hand tightly, afraid. If I let go, the moment would shatter. My other hand rested in my lap, trembling faintly. The cut on my finger had been cleaned and bandaged by a discreet nurse Vincent had called. The small white square looked absurdly clean against my thin, bruised skin. 93 pounds of exhaustion and disbelief wrapped in a cashmere throw that still carried the faint scent of his cologne. I felt like an intruder in this sudden safety, thin, hollow, unworthy. Vincent hadn't let go of my shoulder since we sat down. His touch was careful, almost reverent, as though he feared I might vanish if he pressed too hard. His eyes, dark-shadowed, kept moving between Sofia and me, drinking in every detail. The way she leaned into me, the way my fingers brushed her hair back from her face, the way tears kept slipping down my cheeks no matter how many times I wiped them away. I still can't believe it, he said, quietly, voice rough with unshed tears. She's hearing me. She's hearing you. Sofia looked up at him, signed daddy, then spoke it aloud, small, perfect. His breath hitched. He pulled her closer, pressed his lips to the top of her head, and closed his eyes as though the weight of 8 lost years had finally cracked open his chest. I watched them, father and daughter, reunited in sound, and felt the tearing inside me reach a new, unbearable pitch. Joy collided with grief. Joy for her miracle, grief. For every cold night I had rocked her alone, whispering stories into the dark while wind howled through cracked windows. Grief for Marco and Lila, still waiting in a powerless apartment, feverish and hungry. Grief for the years Vincent could have been there. If only he had known. If only I had searched. If only life had been kinder. The unfairness felt like knives, now twisting relentless. I had carried her 9 months, birthed her in a county hospital, with no one to hold my hand, raised her on food stamps and secondhand coats while he lived in marble halls and private cars. And yet here we were, his arm around me, his daughter calling me mama in a voice I had given back to her. Confusion spun through me, dizzying, disorienting. I didn't know how to belong here. I didn't know how to accept the warmth of his hand on my shoulder, the steady rhythm of his breathing beside me. Part of me wanted to run back to the south side, back to the familiar pain of hunger and cold where at least I understood the rules. But another part, the part that had folded paper cranes and removed years of silence from a child's ear, wanted to stay. Wanted to lean into the protection he offered. Wanted terrifyingly to believe it could be real. Vincent turned to me then. His eyes searched mine, raw, unguarded. "Elena," he said softly. "Look at me." I did slowly, fearfully. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to be the man you and Sofia deserve. I've spent my life building walls, collecting power, thinking it would keep the pain out. But all it did was keep everything good out, too." His voice cracked. "I failed her. I failed you for 9 years. The guilt, it's eating me alive. Every time I look at you, I see what I should have seen sooner. Strength, kindness, Love that didn't need money or power to exist. He swallowed hard. And now I can't stop feeling this. He lifted his free hand, hesitant, and brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. The touch lingered, warm, steady, burning. I love you, he whispered. From the first moment you looked at Sofia like she was worth everything. From the first time you spoke to me in that soft, polite voice, and I felt something crack inside. It's been burning ever since, fierce, consuming. I don't know how to put it out. I don't want to. The confession landed like thunder in my chest. Shock numbed me for a heartbeat, then pain rushed in, hot and violent. Love from him, a man who could buy cities while I counted crumbs, a man whose world had almost destroyed me simply by existing apart from mine. I shook my head, tears falling faster. You don't know me. I'm nobody. I'm thin and tired and scared all the time. I have 2 other children waiting in the dark right now. I have nothing to give you. He cupped my face gently, both hands now, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. You gave me my daughter back, he said. You gave her sound. You gave her mama. You gave me hope I didn't know I still had. His thumbs brushed away more tears. I don't need you to give me anything else. I need you to let me give to you. Let me take care of you. Let me protect you. Let me love you the way you deserve. The words tore something loose inside me, violent, aching. I felt the old walls crumble, the suspicion that had kept me alive on the south side, the guarded heart that had learned early that kindness usually came with strings. They crumbled under the weight of his gaze, under the steady pressure of his hands, under the overwhelming surge of something I hadn't dared name. Love. It rose in me, sudden, fierce, terrifying. Love for the man who had knelt in apology. Love for the father who cried when his daughter said his name. Love for the possibility that safety could be real, that warmth could last. I leaned forward, slow, trembling, and rested my forehead against his. Our breaths mingled. Tears fell between us. I'm scared, I whispered. I know, he answered. I'm scared too. Sofia watched us quiet, curious, then reached up and placed her small hands over both of ours. She signed one word, safe. We both laughed soft, broken, tear-soaked laughter. Vincent pulled us both closer, held us against his chest. I felt his heartbeat fast, strong against my cheek. Sofia nestled between us, listening to it too. For long minutes we sat like that, 3 hearts finding rhythm in the quiet. No words, just breathing, just presence. Condensed emotional stillness that felt holy. Then Vincent spoke, voice low, steady. I'm sending a car for Marco and Lila. Tonight. They'll be here. Safe. Warm. Fed. I swear it. Panic flared briefly, old instincts screaming trap, but I looked into his eyes and saw only truth. Thank you, I whispered. He kissed my forehead, gentle, lingering. I'm going to make this right, he said. For all of you. For us. Outside rain drummed softly against the glass. Inside something healed slowly, painfully, beautifully. The storm in my heart hadn't ended. But for the first time I wasn't facing it alone. October 23rd, 2025. The first clear day in a week. Sunlight poured through the mansion windows in golden shafts, catching dust motes that danced like tiny miracles. Sofia ran ahead of us through the wide hallway, laughing, actual audible laughter, chasing the patterns of light on the marble floor. Marco and Lila trailed behind her, hesitant at first, then bolder, their small feet pattering in unfamiliar luxury. Marco's cough had eased after a night in a warm bed with medicine that cost more than I used to earn in a month. Lila clutched Bunny but smiled every time Sofia turned to wave. I walked between them all, thin arms wrapped around myself inside one of Vincent's soft flannel shirts he had insisted I wear because you're still cold, Elena, I can see it. The shirt hung past my thighs. Sleeves rolled 3 times, yet it felt like armor and vulnerability at once. 93 pounds of disbelief wrapped in cashmere and flannel. The children had eaten breakfast at a table longer than my old apartment, fresh fruit, warm oatmeal milk that wasn't watered down. I had watched them eat with tears in my eyes, too overwhelmed to take more than a few bites myself. Vincent walked beside me close enough that our arms brushed every few steps. He hadn't stopped touching me since last night. Small things. A hand at the small of my back. Fingers brushing mine when he passed. Me coffee, a quiet kiss pressed to my temple when Sofia wasn't looking. Each contact sent sparks through me, terrifying, comforting, burning. The love in his eyes was no longer hidden. It blazed openly, fiercely. And every time he looked at me, I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. I want to take them somewhere safe today, he said quietly. Somewhere normal. Somewhere they can just be children. I nodded, voice soft. They've never been to a park. Not really. Millennium Park, then, he decided. The Bean, the gardens. We'll go this afternoon. The idea felt impossible, dangerous in its normalcy. But I looked at Sofia skipping ahead at Marco, holding Lila's hand, and nodded again. The convoy left at 2 o'clock, 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, discreet security, and plain clothes. Vincent sat beside me in the back seat, Sofia on his lap. Marco and Lila buckled between us. The children stared wide-eyed at the city sliding past tall buildings, Lake Michigan glittering in the distance. I held Lila's small hand, thumb stroking her knuckles, trying to steady the tremor in my own. Vincent's phone buzzed once. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening for a fraction of a second before he silenced it. "Everything okay?" I asked, timid, polite, still, not quite believing I had the right to ask. He forced a smile. "Just business. Nothing important." But the lie sat between us, small, sharp. Millennium Park was crowded but peaceful families, tourists, the mirrored bean reflecting blue sky and laughing faces. Sofia ran straight toward it, arms wide, spinning until she was dizzy. Marco chased her. Lila toddled after giggling. Vincent watched them with something close to awe. His powerful frame relaxed for the first time I had ever seen. I stood beside him, arms wrapped around myself again, despite the mild October air. "They've never had this," I whispered. "A day like this." He turned to me, eyes softening. "They'll have more. Every day if you want it." The promise hung heavy, beautiful, and terrifying. I opened my mouth to answer, but a sharp crack split the air. Not gunfire. Something else, metal on metal tires screeching. Vincent's arm shot out, pulling me behind him in one fluid motion. Down, Sofia screamed real loud, terrified. Marco froze. Lila started crying. Across the plaza, a black sedan had jumped the curb engine, roaring, heading straight toward us. 2 men inside faces, obscured windows down. One raised a hand, not a gun, but something small and dark. Vincent shoved Sofia into my arms. "Run, behind the bean now." I scooped Lila up, grabbed Marco's hand, and ran, heart slamming against my ribs. Sofia clung to me, sobbing. The children's cries mixed with the sudden chaos, people scattering, shouting. Behind us, Vincent faced the car alone. The sedan skidded to a stop 20 feet away. The driver stepped out, tall, familiar. Marco, the Blade Vitali. Vincent's underboss. His second. Vitali smiled, cold, satisfied. "You've gone soft, Vinny. Family outings, really." Vincent stepped forward, voice deadly calm. "You set this up. Not just this," Vitali said. "The blocked routes, the whispers, the timing. You're distracted, weak. The outfit needs strength, not sentiment." Vincent's fists clenched. "You touch them, you die." Vitali laughed, short, ugly. "I don't need to touch them. I just need you gone." He raised his hand again, not a weapon, but a signal. From the crowd, 2 more men moved slow, deliberate, closing in. I crouched behind the bean's curved surface, children pressed against me. Sofia's sobs shook her whole body. Marco whimpered, "Mama, what's happening?" Lila buried her face in my neck. Vincent glanced back once, eyes locking on mine. In that instant, I saw everything. Love, terror, remorse, rage, all burning together. Then he turned back to Vitali. "You've betrayed me," Vincent said quietly. "After everything." "Business," Vitali answered. "Nothing personal." Vincent moved fast, controlled. He closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed Vitali by the collar, slammed him against the sedan hood. The other men hesitated, guns half drawn but not raised. Vincent's voice carried low and lethal. "You think this makes you strong? Threatening children." "My children," Vitali struggled. "You're finished, Rossi. The family's already choosing sides." Vincent leaned in close. "Then choose wrong, and see what happens." He released Vitali, suddenly shoved him hard enough that the man stumbled back into the car door. The 2 approaching men froze. Vincent turned his back on them, deliberately walked straight to us. I stood, shaking, children clinging. He reached us in seconds, pulled all 4 of us against him. Sofia, Marco, Lila, me. His arms were iron bands. His heartbeat thundered against my ear. "You're safe," he whispered into my hair. "I swear it." Sirens wailed in the distant, security police someone had called. Vitali climbed back into the sedan. Before the door closed, he looked at Vincent one last time. "This isn't over." The car peeled away. Vincent held us tighter. His body trembled, not from fear, but from the violence he had swallowed. The conflict inside him raged, visibly remorse for the life that had brought this danger, fury. At the betrayal, overwhelming love that made him willing to burn it all down to keep us safe. I looked up at him, tears streaming. "You could have been hurt. I'd die before I let anything touch you," he said, voice raw. "Any of you." The words pierced me, deep, healing, terrifying. I reached up, touched his face, thin fingers against his jaw. "I love you," I whispered, first time aloud. "I'm so scared, but I love you." His eyes closed briefly, pain and relief warring across his features. When he opened them again, the love burned brighter than ever. "I love you too," he said. "More than anything. More than power. More than this life." He kissed me, then soft, desperate, right there in the middle of the chaos. The children pressed closer. Sofia touched both our faces. The sirens grew louder. Vincent pulled back just enough to look at me. "I'm ending it," he said quietly. "The shadows. The threats. All of it. For you. For them." I nodded, tears falling. "We'll be okay." He held us tighter as uniformed officers approached, careful, respectful. In that moment, amid the crowd and the flashing lights, the world narrowed to us, 5 hearts beating together. The betrayal had come, but so had the choice. And Vincent had chosen us. October 24th, 2025. The city woke under a sky washed clean by yesterday's storm. Sunlight slanted through the mansion windows in long, forgiving bars of gold. Sofia ran barefoot across the sun porch rug, chasing Marco and Lila in circles. Their laughter bouncing off marble and glass, 3 small voices blending into something bright and unbroken. I stood at the doorway, watching them, one hand pressed to my chest, as though I needed to hold my heart in place. The flannel shirt Vincent had given me still hung loose on my frame, 93 pounds of bone and wonder wrapped in borrowed warmth. Vincent came up behind me quietly. His arm slid around my waist from behind, gentle but sure chin resting on my shoulder. I felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing against my back and let myself lean into him just a little. "They're happy," he murmured against my hair. "All 3 of them." I nodded, throat too tight for words at first. Then I whispered, "They've never had a morning like this. Warm, safe, full." He turned me slowly to face him. His eyes, dark, deep, searched mine with an intensity that still made my knees feel unsteady. "And you?" he asked softly. "Are you happy?" Tears rose before I could stop them. "I don't know what happy feels like anymore. Not really. But this is close." He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that escaped. "I spent years running from feeling anything at all," he said. "Power was easier. Control was easier. But you walked in here with nothing, no armor, no safety net, and you showed me what real strength looks like. You loved my daughter when the world had already written her off. You loved her enough to risk everything." His voice cracked. "And somewhere in those quiet moments, when you folded paper cranes, when you held her while she cried without sound, I fell in love with you. Completely. Irrevocably." The confession landed like sunlight after endless night. I reached up thin fingers, trembling, and touched his jaw. "I was so afraid," I admitted, voice small, raw. "Afraid you'd see how little I had. How broken I was. Afraid love like this only happened to other people, people who didn't have to count crackers or sleep in coats because the heat was off." He shook his head fiercely. "Love doesn't see skin color. It doesn't measure bank accounts. It sees heart. And yours, Elena, yours is the biggest I've ever known." He kissed me, then slow, deep, desperate, in the most tender way. Not a kiss of possession, but of surrender. I rose on my toes, arms winding around his neck, pouring every year of loneliness, every cold night, every whispered prayer into that single moment. When we parted, foreheads pressed together, both of us were breathing hard. "I'm dismantling it," he said quietly. "The shadows, the roots, the leverage. I've already started. Meetings this morning, legitimate contracts only from now on. No more gray areas. No more men like Vitali who think power means fear." I pulled back just enough to look at him. "You're giving up everything." "No," he answered. "I'm choosing something better. You, them, us." Sofia ran over, then tugging at Vincent's pant leg. "Daddy Marco says the bean is magic. Can we go again?" Vincent laughed, real unguarded laughter, and scooped her up. "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon." Marco and Lila crowded in, wrapping small arms around our legs. For a long moment we stood there, 5 people who should never have found each other yet did. The disparity still ached, his tailored shirt against my borrowed flannel, his steady strength against my lingering thinness. But in that ache was healing. Later that afternoon, Vincent drove us to a quiet stretch of lakefront, not Millennium Park this time, but a small public beach where waves lapped gently and seagulls wheeled overhead. No security detail. Just us. We spread blankets on the sand. The children ran to the water's edge, shrieking with delight every time a wave chased their toes. Vincent sat beside me, shoulder to shoulder, watching them. "I almost lost this," he said quietly, "because I thought power was the only way to keep people safe. I was wrong." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "We all make mistakes. The lesson is what we do next." He turned, kissed my temple. "The real knowledge comes from pain. The real lesson comes from choosing love over fear. Education isn't only books, it's living through the dark and still reaching for light. Knowledge grows when we let go of pride. Lesson after lesson teaches us compassion. Education of the heart never ends. Knowledge of what truly matters changes everything. I smiled through fresh tears. You're learning fast. He laughed softly. I have the best teacher. The sun dipped lower, painting the lake in rose and gold. Sofia ran back, dropped a smooth stone into my palm. For you, Mama, it's pretty like you. I closed my fingers around it, small, perfect, warm from the sun. Marco and Lila added their own treasures, a shell, a feather. Vincent watched, eyes shining. That night back in the mansion, we tucked the children into beds that still felt too big, too soft. Sofia fell asleep holding my hand, and Vincent's breathing evenly in the quiet. Marco curled against my side. Lila nestled under Vincent's arm. We stayed there long after their breathing deepened, simply watching them. Vincent whispered into the dark, I never thought I'd have this. I turned my head, met his eyes in the low light. Neither did I. He kissed me again, slow, reverent, full of promise. I love you, he said against my lips. No matter what color skin we carry, no matter what walls we came from, love doesn't see poverty or wealth. It sees soul. And I love you, I answered, voice steady for the first time in years. With everything I have left. The next morning, Vincent stood at the window overlooking the lake while I made breakfast. Simple things, eggs, toast, fruit. The children ate at the counter, chattering. He watched us like we were the miracle, not the other way around. In the quiet after breakfast, he took my hand. I'm not perfect, he said. I'll make mistakes. But I promise you this, every day I'll choose you. Every day I'll choose them. Every day I'll choose the light over the shadows. I squeezed his hand. That's all I need. And in that promise, in the laughter of 3 children, in the warmth of a home that finally felt like home, the story found its ending. Not grand, not perfect, but deeply, quietly human. Knowledge grows in the cracks where pain once lived. Lesson after lesson teaches us to choose kindness. Education of the heart shows us love has no borders. Knowledge reminds us compassion costs nothing. Lesson upon lesson builds bridges where walls once stood. Education reveals that true wealth is measured in care. To everyone watching this video, I wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear that love and compassion can overcome anything. Tell me in the comments, how does this story make you feel? Does it connect to something real in your own life? Share your emotions. I want to listen to what lives deep in your hearts. Goodbye for now, and I promise, see you again in the next video. Disclaimer. All stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.